Elias Thorne sat in his small apartment on the edge of New Terra, staring at the blinking notification on his communicator. Diplomatic messages usually brought routine updates, trade requests, or questions about interstellar laws. But this one was different. The sender was the Galactic Council of Zytheria, a species Elias had only read about in history books and diplomatic reports. The message was simple, almost shocking in its directness. Report to Zytheria Prime within 48 hours. Your presence is required by Queen Lyra. He stared at the screen, feeling a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Queen Lyra was the ruler of the Zytherians, a species known for their brilliant minds and unbending customs. They were famously strict, yet admired across the galaxy for their achievements in science and culture. To be summoned personally by their queen was not just unusual. It was unprecedented for a human diplomat. Elias rubbed his eyes. This has to be a mistake, he muttered. But the communicator beeped again with a confirmation, the travel arrangements, a secure passage, and the expectation that he arrive promptly. There was no room for negotiation. It was not just a summons. It was a command. By the next day, Elias was aboard the sleek, silver shuttle provided by the Zytherians. As the ship accelerated into hyperspace, he gazed out of the window at the stars stretching into lines of light. A part of him marveled at the fact that he was about to meet one of the most intelligent and respected leaders in the galaxy. Another part of him, the part that had grown up reading about alien politics and disasters, feared the unknown entirely. When the shuttle finally emerged from hyperspace, Elias saw Zytheria Prime for the first time. It was a planet of shimmering cities suspended above crystal-clear oceans, where enormous towers of glass and metal reflected the sun in dazzling patterns. The air shimmered with energy, almost as if the planet itself were alive. He was greeted by Zytherian aides, tall, elegant beings with luminous eyes and flowing robes that shimmered like the surface of water. "Welcome, Elias Thorne," said one of them in perfect galactic standard. "Queen Lyra awaits you in the throne hall." Elias nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. The palace itself was a marvel. The floors and walls seemed to flow like liquid crystal, and soft, harmonious music filled the air, vibrating in his chest without a source. He followed the aides through corridors that twisted and turned in ways that seemed impossible. Yet the architecture was precise and intentional. Each step brought him closer to a reality far beyond anything he had imagined. Finally, he entered the throne hall. It was vast, enormous enough that he could barely see the edges, and the ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into light. At the far end, elevated on a platform of glowing crystal, sat Queen Lyra. She was breathtaking. Her form was elegant, her skin radiating a soft, pearlescent glow, and her eyes large, expressive, and shimmering with intelligence studied him carefully. She radiated authority, but also curiosity, as if she were measuring every detail of his presence. "Elias Thorne," she said, her voice musical but firm, "we have summoned you for a matter of great importance. You will marry me, or you will face consequences for your failure to comply with Zytherian custom." Elias froze. The words were so shocking that they seemed to echo around the hall. Marriage to the queen herself? His mind raced, trying to process the gravity of the situation. He had studied alien cultures, including the Zytherians, and knew that their laws were strict and sometimes rigid. But he had never imagined a scenario like this. "Your Majesty," he said cautiously, I am honored by your summons, but I must admit, this is entirely unexpected." Queen Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "It is unexpected because you are human. Humans rarely face the weight of responsibility or choice in ways we do. But this is not merely about personal preference. It is a test, a challenge, and a decision that carries consequences for both our peoples." Elias swallowed. He had anticipated diplomatic discussions, debates over trade agreements, or negotiations for interstellar law. He had not anticipated a personal ultimatum that carried such significance. "Please," he said, trying to remain composed, "can you explain what this means for me? For my people?" Queen Lyra rose gracefully from her throne, her presence commanding yet serene. "The Zytherians observe qualities in those we encounter: strength, wisdom, creativity, and courage are valued above all. Marriage, in our society, is not merely a union of individuals, it is a bond that shapes alliances, societies, and futures. By offering this choice to you, I am presenting not only a personal request, but a test of humanity itself. Elias took a deep breath. The idea of being part of the test of humanity was overwhelming. Every diplomatic instinct in him urged caution, but another part of him, the part that had spent his life navigating impossible situations, recognized the opportunity to demonstrate human ingenuity and resilience. You will be given challenges. The Queen continued. They will test your mind, your adaptability, and your character. Your performance will determine the outcome. Do not take this lightly. Elias nodded, though he felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The Queen's words, though daunting, also offered a chance to show that humans were more than they appeared on the galactic stage. He had spent his life proving humanity's potential, but now, the stakes were immeasurably higher. Over the next hours, Elias was escorted to his quarters, a suite within the palace designed for comfort and reflection. Though luxurious, it was also serene, with soft lighting, walls that reflected his movements like liquid mirrors, and furniture that seemed to mold to his body. He unpacked his few belongings, feeling a strange mixture of awe and anxiety. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. A Xitherian aide entered, carrying a small device that projected a holographic map of the palace and the challenges he would face. Your first trial will begin at dawn, the aide explained. It is a test of intellect and diplomacy. You will meet the Council of Minds, who will observe your reasoning, negotiation skills, and creative problem-solving. The Queen will review your performance personally. Elias studied the map, noting the paths, chambers, and observation points. The complexity was overwhelming, but he also recognized the logic behind it. The Xitherians valued precision, planning, and strategy, qualities humans could learn from, and also qualities they could challenge. As the aide left, Elias sat by the window and gazed at the alien world below. Massive cities sparkled like stars, rivers glimmered with colors he could not name, and the sky shimmered with hues that shifted with the movement of the twin suns. Despite the fear gnawing at him, he felt a spark of determination. Humanity had survived impossible odds, explored worlds beyond imagination, and adapted to circumstances that would have broken other species. This was another test, and he would not shrink from it. That night, Elias could not sleep. He thought of his home, his family, the people he represented, and the responsibility now placed upon him. He realized that this was not just about survival or marriage, it was about proving that humanity could stand as an equal among the stars, even when confronted with customs and powers far beyond their own. As dawn approached, he rose and prepared himself mentally. His first trial awaited, and with it, the chance to show the Xitherians that humans were clever, resourceful, and resilient. The Queen's demand, though shocking, had ignited a determination within him that he had never felt before. Elias stepped toward the door, his heart steady, ready to face the challenges that would define not only his fate, but perhaps the future of human-alien relations. For the first time since he received the summons, Elias felt a thrill of possibility. This was more than survival, it was a chance to shine. And in a galaxy that often underestimated humanity, he intended to make every moment count. The sun of Xetheria Prime rose slowly, casting a soft golden glow over the city. Elias Thorne stood in his quarters, taking deep breaths to steady his nerves. Today was his first trial and opportunity to demonstrate the skills and values that humans were known for, even if the Xitherians often underestimated them. The thought of facing the Council of Minds made his chest tighten, but he reminded himself intelligence, creativity, and courage had always guided humanity through impossible situations. A quiet chime announced his escort. The Xitherian aide, elegant and precise, entered, bowing slightly. The Queen expects you in the Hall of Minds. Follow me. Elias nodded, adjusting his jacket. He followed the aide through corridors that shimmered like water, twisting in impossible ways yet perfectly logical to the Xitherian eye. As they moved, he couldn't help but observe the subtle details, the walls that seemed alive with moving light, the soft hum of energy beneath the floors, in the way the architecture guided people naturally toward their destinations. Everything about the palace reflected thought, precision, and harmony values that had shaped the Zitharians for millennia. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber, circular and filled with crystalline pillars that refracted sunlight into dancing patterns. The Council of Minds awaited, seated in a semicircle around a floating platform. Each member was taller than any human, with luminous eyes that seemed to pierce through him, studying every detail of his posture, expression, and manner. "Welcome, Elias Thorne," one of them said, their voice calm but resonant. "You are here to demonstrate your abilities in reasoning, diplomacy, and problem-solving. We will observe how you approach complex situations." Elias nodded politely, trying to project confidence. "I am honored to be here," he said. "I will do my best." The council presented the first challenge, a simulated negotiation between two planets in dispute over resources. Elias had only moments to understand the scenario. One planet had limited water, while the other had excess but needed energy. The task seemed simple at first, but the simulation quickly revealed hidden complexities. Each planet had cultural needs, political pressures, and long histories of mistrust. He took a deep breath and began speaking, carefully considering each factor. He proposed a solution where resources would be shared in exchange for energy cooperation, adding measures to ensure both sides maintain their cultural traditions and political autonomy. The simulation reacted dynamically, showing resistance from each planet, which forced Elias to adapt his strategy in real time. The Council of Minds watched silently. Elias noticed subtle signs of approval, a slight tilt of a head, a barely perceptible nod, or a glimmer in their luminous eyes. Despite the alien formality, he felt that his approach balancing logic, empathy, and creativity was making an impression. When the simulation concluded successfully, one council member spoke. "Your solution demonstrates adaptability and respect for the needs of all parties. These are not qualities often seen in humans. You are learning quickly." Elias felt a small surge of relief, though he knew the challenges were far from over. The council then presented a second test, a series of logic puzzles that required abstract thinking, memory, and rapid pattern recognition. The puzzles were unlike anything humans had encountered: three-dimensional constructs that shifted as they were analyzed, equations that altered with each solution, and sequences that seemed random but contained hidden rules. For hours, Elias worked through the puzzles, relying on both intuition and reason. The Zitharians observed keenly, noting the way he approached problems with creativity, trial, and careful observation. He made mistakes, of course, but he corrected them quickly, learning from each error. He realized that what the Zitharians valued was not perfection, it was the ability to adapt, to grow, and to think in ways that challenged expectation. By the time the puzzles were complete, Elias's mind was exhausted but alert. He had proven, in small ways, that humans could think differently, combining imagination with logic in ways the Zitharians did not anticipate. The final challenge of the day tested diplomacy. Elias was introduced to Zitharian scholars who had spent decades in study and observation of other civilizations. Their task was to debate and negotiate with him on the ethics of interstellar resource sharing, colonization policies, and cultural preservation. Humans often struggle with such discussions under pressure, but Elias drew on his experience as a diplomat and his knowledge of human history. He argued for compromise, for listening, and for creative solutions that respected both parties' needs. His words were measured, his tone respectful, yet he did not shy away from asserting his perspective. The scholars listened intently, sometimes challenging him, sometimes offering counter-arguments. Through it all, Elias remained calm, focused, and thoughtful. By evening, the Council of Minds convened privately to discuss his performance. Elias was left alone in a quiet reflection room, where the light shifted with the passage of time, creating a serene environment that encouraged contemplation. He thought about his day, about the alien perspectives he had encountered, and about the subtle ways humans could demonstrate their worth beyond raw strength or technology. When he was summoned back to the throne hall, Queen Lyra was waiting, her posture as graceful and commanding as ever. You have completed the first stage, she said. Your performance has surprised us. You are not like the other species we have encountered. Humans possess qualities we often underestimate: adaptability, creativity, and moral reasoning. Elias felt a flicker of pride, but he kept his expression neutral. Thank you, Your Majesty. I am still learning about your people and your culture, but I will continue to do my best. The Queen nodded. That is expected. Your journey is not merely personal, it reflects the potential of humanity. Scifi has often considered humans as unpredictable and primitive. Yet, in one day, you have shown qualities that challenge our assumptions. Elias could hardly believe her words. For centuries, humans have been seen as a minor species, often dismissed by older civilizations. And yet, here he was, being acknowledged not just as a diplomat, but as an example of human potential. Queen Lyra continued, walking gracefully toward the window, her gaze sweeping over the alien city. Our cultures are very different. Humans rely on emotion, intuition, and flexibility, while Scythians rely on precision, rules, and long-term planning. Both have value. If you succeed, you may show our people that humans are not merely chaotic or impulsive, but capable of brilliance. Elias studied her carefully. He realized that this was more than a personal challenge. His actions and choices could influence how humans were perceived across the galaxy. Every decision, every thought, every word mattered. The weight of it was immense, but it also gave him purpose. You have my word. Your Majesty, he said quietly, I will do everything I can to show the best of humanity. The Queen's eyes glimmered with approval. Good. Tomorrow, the trials will continue. You will face challenges of creativity and courage, not just intellect. Prepare yourself. The future may require more than strategy, it may require ingenuity in unexpected ways. As Elias returned to his quarters that evening, he reflected on the events of the day. He had faced simulations, puzzles, and debates. Yet the true lesson was emerging. Human strength was not in dominance, but in adaptability, morality, and the ability to inspire others. In a world governed by rules, humans brought ingenuity. In a society driven by tradition, humans brought change, for the first time since his arrival. Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, full of alien tests and expectations. But he had already begun to show that humanity could shine, even in the most foreign of circumstances. He knew that the challenges would grow harder, that the expectations of Queen Lyra and the Scythians would push him to his limits. Yet, in the quiet of his reflection, Elias felt ready to meet the trials head-on. Tomorrow, the true test of human creativity and courage would begin, and Elias Thorne was determined to prove that humanity, though young and often underestimated, had the power to surprise even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The next morning, Elias awoke to the soft hum of energy flowing through the palace walls. Sunlight shimmered across the floor like liquid gold, and the crystal panels of his room reflected every movement he made. The trials of yesterday had tested his intellect and diplomacy, but today promised something different. He sensed it as soon as the door chime sounded. The Queen's next challenge would test his creativity, his adaptability, and perhaps even the core of his character. Elias followed the Scythian aide through twisting corridors that seemed to pulse with life. The air vibrated with a faint hum, almost musical, yet calm and steady. It was easy to forget he was walking through a palace of one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Today's destination was called the Garden of Possibilities, a space the aides described as a realm of reflection, observation, and experimentation. The garden was unlike anything Elias had seen. Towering plants glowed with soft bioluminescent colors, and streams of liquid light ran through the air as if gravity were optional. The trees seemed to bend and stretch toward him, their branches forming shapes that hinted at symbols, stories, and ideas. In the center of the garden floated a crystalline platform where Queen Lyra waited, radiant and poised. Her eyes, large and intelligent, fixed on him with quiet scrutiny. Elias Thorne, she said, her voice calm yet commanding. You have shown intellect and diplomacy. Now, we wish to see your human creativity. Xitherians rely on logic, patterns, and tradition. Humans, we are told, bring innovation, imagination, and moral insight. Today, you will demonstrate these qualities. Elias nodded. I will do my best, Your Majesty. Lyra gestured to the garden around them. In this garden, you will encounter challenges that have no fixed rules. Your task is to observe, interpret, and interact. Your solutions will reveal how humans perceive the world differently from Xitherians. As he stepped forward, the garden shifted. Paths appeared where none had existed, colors changed, and symbols floated in the air, forming puzzles that were part visual, part conceptual. Elias realized that this was less a test of knowledge than of imagination. He began to explore, using his senses to understand the subtle patterns. He touched a glowing plant, which responded with a soft melody, then placed his hand near a stream of liquid light, which shaped itself into a three-dimensional puzzle. Hours passed, and Elias moved through the garden with curiosity and determination. Each element challenged him in unexpected ways. A vine would shift into a shape that required him to think about balance and proportion. A floating symbol would ask questions without words, requiring him to consider logic and emotion simultaneously. With each interaction, he discovered new ways to solve problems, ways that combine reasoning with intuition. Careful thought with creative insight. Meanwhile, Queen Lyra observed quietly. She saw how he approached the garden's challenges not with fear, not with hesitation, but with curiosity and flexibility. Where other species might rely purely on learned patterns, Elias experimented, adapted, and even laughed at mistakes, learning from each failure. In those moments, the qualities she had hoped to find in a human were becoming clear: courage, ingenuity, and the ability to think beyond the obvious. At one point, Elias encountered a large, shifting puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. Its pieces moved constantly, and every time he thought he had aligned them, the pattern shifted. For a moment, he felt frustration creeping in. But then he paused and observed the movement more carefully. He noticed a rhythm, a subtle flow that suggested a pattern he had overlooked. By combining observation, intuition, and trial, he gradually aligned the elements until the puzzle resonated with a bright glow. The garden itself seemed to respond, as if acknowledging his success. The queen finally spoke. Impressive. You see patterns not as fixed, but as opportunities. That is a human quality. Xitherians often seek order and predictability. Humans, when faced with chaos, create solutions that surprise and inspire. Elias felt a rush of relief. Yet he knew this was only part of the challenge. The final test in the garden would not be a puzzle, but a decision. At the center of the platform, a holographic display appeared, presenting two civilizations in conflict over a shared resource. The simulation allowed him to intervene, but it was deliberately ambiguous. The Xitherians wanted to see if he could find a solution that balanced morality, creativity, and pragmatism, a test not of intellect alone, but of heart. Elias studied the display. One civilization needed energy to survive, while the other required space to cultivate life. Both demands were legitimate, yet neither could proceed without the cooperation of the other. He thought about human history: conflicts resolved through negotiation, creativity, and compromise. He formulated a plan, rather than choosing one over the other. He created a solution that integrated both needs. Energy would be shared efficiently, cultivation space optimized, and a system of mutual monitoring and support would ensure fairness. The holographic simulation responded immediately. The two civilizations began cooperating, exchanging resources and knowledge, and even forming cultural alliances. Elias's solution was not the simplest, nor the fastest, but it honored both parties' needs and fostered trust, qualities the Xitherians rarely emphasized. Queen Lyra's expression softened. You are beginning to show us why humans endure, grow, and inspire. Your creativity is not chaotic, it is structured, purposeful, and adaptive. You bring something our species rarely sees: solutions that honor life and morality simultaneously. Elias felt a sense of pride, yet he remained humble. He realized that every challenge he faced, every solution he created, reflected not just his skill, but the essence of humanity. Humans could adapt to uncertainty, innovate under pressure, and approach problems with both heart and mind. This was the quality that set them apart in the galaxy. As the day drew to a close, the Queen introduced a final aspect of the trial: observation and reflection. She invited him to interact with Xitherian scholars who had studied other species for decades. The scholars presented complex scenarios, ethical dilemmas, and cultural puzzles. Elias listened carefully, responding thoughtfully, and showing empathy for perspectives different from his own. He demonstrated that humans could not only survive challenges, but also inspire cooperation, understanding, and mutual respect. By evening, the Garden of Possibilities had tested Elias in ways he could not have imagined. He was physically and mentally tired, yet exhilarated. He had faced ambiguity, chaos, and moral complexity and had emerged demonstrating the unique strengths of his species. Queen Lyra approached him as the bioluminescent light of the garden shifted into soft, warm tones. "You have done well, Elias Thorne," she said. "Humans often surprise us, even when we assume we understand them. Your performance shows that courage, creativity, and moral insight are qualities we should not underestimate." Elias bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am still learning, but I will continue to do my best." The Queen's gaze lingered on him. "Your journey is only beginning. The challenges ahead will be different. They may test your patience, your courage, or your resolve. But one thing is clear: you have already begun to show what humanity is capable of. This is why you were brought here, and why your choices matter not just to yourself, but to your people." Elias nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. He felt a quiet determination settle within him. The trials were not merely about meeting expectations, they were about proving that humans could rise to any challenge, even when the rules, the culture, and the environment were entirely alien. That night, as he returned to his quarters, Elias reflected on the day's experiences. He thought about the garden, the puzzles, the moral dilemmas, and the Queen's words. He realized that the essence of the challenge was not to outthink the Xitherians, but to demonstrate that humans could bring perspective, innovation, and moral reasoning to situations that others might see as impossible. Elias sat by the window, looking out over the city that shimmered like a field of stars. He felt a growing sense of purpose. He was not merely a visitor, a diplomat, or a participant in alien tests. He was a representative of humanity, tasked with showing that his species could thrive, inspire, and endure. The challenges ahead would be greater, but he felt ready, for the first time since his arrival. Elias allowed himself to smile. Humanity was not the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but it had something equally powerful: creativity, courage, and the ability to shine in even the most unfamiliar circumstances. And Elias Thorne was determined to make the Xitherians see it. The garden lights shifted into soft, calming hues as the palace quieted for the night. Elias felt a sense of calm, knowing that he had passed an important test, but he also knew that the next trial would push him even further. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it with the human spirit, resilient, inventive, and unwavering. The morning sun over Xetheria Prime cast long shadows across the palace terraces, painting the city in gold and violet hues. Elias Thorne stood at the balcony of his quarters, breathing in the crisp, alien air. The past days had been a whirlwind of challenges, simulations, puzzles, and tests of creativity and diplomacy. Each trial had pushed him, yet each had also revealed something extraordinary. Humans could adapt, innovate, and inspire even in the most unfamiliar circumstances. But today felt different. The air carried a subtle tension, a quiet hum that seemed to resonate through the palace walls. When the Xitherian aide arrived to escort him, Elias noticed that even their usual composure seemed sharper, more serious. Something had changed. "You are to meet with the Queen and the Council of Advisors immediately," the aide said, bowing politely. "They require your insight on a matter of urgency." Elias followed silently, his mind alert. He had begun to understand the rhythms of Xitherian life, their precision, patience, and careful observation, but he sensed that today's meeting would not be like the others. The throne hall shimmered with its usual grandeur. Queen Lyra stood at the platform, flanked by her advisors. Her expression was serene, yet her eyes revealed concern. "Elias Thorne," she said, her voice steady, "you have impressed us with your intellect, creativity, and adaptability. But now you are faced with a challenge that tests not only skill, but judgment, ethics, and the ability to inspire unity." Elias felt a chill of anticipation. The previous trials had been simulations, puzzles, and moral exercises, but this sounded real. "I am ready to assist, Your Majesty," he said. Lyra gestured to a holographic display that shimmered above the platform. It projected a distant star system, where the planet's once peaceful allies were now locked in a subtle conflict over trade, resources, and cultural influence. "The Council of Advisors has identified a faction within our society that seeks to manipulate the situation for their own advantage," she explained. "They hope to provoke humans into choosing sides or acting hastily, which could create distrust between our species. We wish to know your perspective on resolution and alliance building." Elias studied the display carefully. The planets were thriving but fragile, their societies dependent on cooperation, trade, and shared knowledge. A minor misstep could destabilize the system, not just politically, but socially and economically. He realized that the challenge was as much about observation and judgment as it was about strategy. He began by asking questions about the history of the planets, the cultural differences, and the intentions of the Zitharian advisors who were observing. By listening first, he avoided making assumptions or rash decisions. He noted subtle patterns, how minor disputes had escalated, where miscommunication had caused distrust, and which factions were most willing to compromise. "The key," Elias said after careful analysis, "is not to impose a single solution, but to foster understanding. Each planet must see the benefits of cooperation and recognize that their success depends on collaboration, not conflict." Queen Lyra nodded. "Go on." He outlined a plan that incorporated human principles of negotiation, transparency, and moral reasoning. The planets would create joint councils to manage resources, establish trade regulations that respected each culture, and initiate cultural exchange programs to promote mutual understanding. Furthermore, he suggested that Zitharian observers remain impartial, serving as advisors rather than enforcers, to ensure trust between all parties. The advisors listened silently. Elias could feel the weight of their scrutiny. This was not just a test of intellect, it was a test of diplomacy, ethics, and character. "Your approach is unusual," one advisor said, their voice resonating with calm authority. "Other species might rely on direct control or strict enforcement. Humans rely on trust, reasoning, and subtle influence. Why do you believe this will succeed?" Elias smiled slightly. "Because humans have survived by understanding others, even those very different from us. Cooperation, creativity, and moral reasoning are not weaknesses, they are strengths. By helping others see mutual benefit, we create solutions that endure." The council paused. Elias could sense that his words were making an impression, even among beings who had long considered humans unpredictable. He continued, explaining how building trust gradually, respecting cultural values, and fostering dialogue could prevent manipulation and create alliances stronger than any imposed rule. Queen Lyra's eyes softened. "You are beginning to show that humans bring qualities we have long overlooked: flexibility, creativity, and the ability to inspire cooperation across difference. Your reasoning is not only practical, it is morally sound. These are qualities we value highly." As the meeting concluded, Elias felt a mix of relief and anticipation. The day's challenge had been less about solving a puzzle, and more about proving that humans could navigate complexity with wisdom and heart. But as he returned to his quarters, a new realization struck him: the challenge was not yet over. The council's subtle tensions hinted at political intrigue, hidden agendas, and factions that might try to undermine his influence or the alliance he had proposed. Later that evening, as Elias reflected on the day, he noticed small details he had overlooked before. Some advisors had whispered quietly among themselves, while others exchanged subtle glances when he spoke. The Queen had seemed concerned about these undercurrents, though she had not shown it overtly. Elias realized that surviving the trials would not only require intelligence and creativity, but also keen observation and strategic thinking. The following morning brought another surprise. The Queen summoned him to the Hall of Strategy, a room designed for planning, discussion, and foresight. Here, he was asked to review ongoing disputes, identify potential risks, and propose preventative measures. The holographic maps displayed regions of political tension, trade routes, and cultural centers. Each element was interdependent, and a miscalculation could cause unforeseen consequences. Elias studied the maps carefully. He noted patterns in trade routes, alliances, and cultural exchanges. He observed where influence could be balanced, where communication could prevent misunderstanding, and where subtle gestures could build trust. His human perspective allowed him to see opportunities for creativity and compromise that Zitharians, bound by strict tradition, had not considered. Over the next hours, he proposed solutions that combined diplomacy, cultural understanding, and strategic foresight. He suggested joint councils, resource-sharing initiatives, and cultural exchange programs to strengthen ties between planets. Every proposal was grounded in both practicality and ethics, demonstrating that human insight could complement Zitharian logic rather than challenge it. By the end of the day, the Queen called him to the central platform. "Elias Thorne," she said, her eyes gleaming, "you have not only completed the tasks set before you, you have influenced our society in subtle, but meaningful ways. Your actions demonstrate that humans are capable of inspiring trust, cooperation, and innovation, even in situations designed to create conflict. This is why you were brought here." Elias felt a quiet satisfaction, yet he remained humble. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only hope my actions reflect well on humanity and help build understanding between our species." The Queen approached him. "Your journey is far from over. You have shown wisdom, courage, and ingenuity. But remember, the greatest challenges often come not from puzzles or simulations, but from the choices we make when others' agendas conflict with our own. Observe carefully, act thoughtfully, and always consider the consequences of your decisions. That is what makes your species remarkable." Elias nodded. He realized that the trials were not just tests, they were lessons. Humanity's strength lay not in dominance or technology alone, but in its capacity to navigate complexity, inspire cooperation, and make moral choices that strengthen alliances rather than shatter them. That evening, as he returned to his quarters, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The political intrigue, subtle tensions, and hidden agendas of the Zitharians could have intimidated a less confident individual, but he had learned to trust his human instincts, to combine reason with empathy, and to act decisively when necessary. These qualities, humanity's unique strengths, had carried him through every challenge so far. From his window, he gazed at the shimmering city below. The light sparkled like stars, reflecting off the crystal towers and flowing rivers of energy. He realized that the palace, the Queen, and the Zitharians were not just testing him, they were teaching him. And in doing so, they were learning something equally important. Humans were not merely a young, chaotic species. They were capable of brilliance, strategy, and moral insight that could shape the galaxy in ways others could not. As the night deepened, Elias allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new challenges, and perhaps even tests of courage he had not yet imagined. But he felt ready. The lessons of the past days had strengthened him, not just as an individual, but as a representative of humanity. The morning light of Zitharia Prime bathed the palace in soft gold and violet hues. Elias Thorne stood in his quarters, looking out over the vast city below. The trials, the tests, and the challenges had all led to this moment. He could feel the weight of expectation not just from Queen Lyra, but from his own species. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries, dismissed by older civilizations as unpredictable, chaotic, or weak. Now, Elias had the chance to prove that humans could shine as equals among the stars. The Queen's aide arrived quietly, bowing as always. "The Queen requests your presence in the throne hall." "Elias Thorne," the aide said, All who have observed your trials will be present." Elias nodded. He adjusted his clothing and took a deep breath. Every step he took through the twisting corridors of the palace felt deliberate, measured. He had learned to observe, to understand, and to adapt. Today, his human qualities, intuition, creativity, and moral courage would be on full display. When he entered the throne hall, the room seemed even larger than before. Queen Lyra stood on the crystalline platform, radiant and composed. Around her were the members of the Council of Minds, advisors, and scholars who had observed his journey. The atmosphere was serious, yet it carried a sense of anticipation. As if the entire room knew that something significant was about to unfold. Elias Thorne. Queen Lyra began, her voice calm and musical. "You have completed challenges that test intellect, creativity, diplomacy, and courage. You have faced situations that many species could not endure. You have demonstrated qualities that are rare in the galaxy, the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to inspire. Today, you will show us the final outcome of your journey." Elias's pulse quickened. He had anticipated this moment, yet nothing could fully prepare him for the culmination of weeks of observation, trials, and subtle tests. He bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I have tried to represent humanity to the best of my ability." Lyra's eyes studied him intently. "It is not only about representation. It is about shaping perception, building trust, and showing the potential of your species. What you do now will influence not just your fate, but the perception of humans across the galaxy." Elias nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He had prepared solutions for every puzzle, every simulation, and every moral challenge. But this final moment required something more, a demonstration of leadership, wisdom, and vision. The Queen gestured, and a holographic projection appeared above the platform. It displayed the star systems, planets, and civilizations he had interacted with, including those previously in dispute. The Council of Minds watched closely as Elias began to speak. "Your Highness, esteemed advisors," he began, "I have learned much during my time here. I have seen the value of order, precision, and tradition in your society. I have also seen the potential for creativity, adaptability, and cooperation in humans. My approach has been to combine these qualities, to use observation, empathy, and reason to find solutions that benefit all parties, and to foster trust between civilizations." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Humans are not the strongest, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, but we have qualities that allow us to endure, to adapt, and to inspire. We see opportunities where others see barriers. We find solutions when others see only conflict. And we understand that true strength lies not in domination, but in collaboration, morality, and creativity." The holographic projection shifted to highlight the planets in conflict. Elias continued, describing how he had proposed alliances, cultural exchanges, and resource-sharing programs. "These measures," he said, "are designed not to control or dictate, but to foster understanding, cooperation, and mutual respect. By combining the strengths of humans and Zitharians, we can create a model for interstellar relations that others may follow." The council members whispered quietly among themselves, exchanging looks that Elias had learned to interpret. There was admiration, surprise, and perhaps even a hint of hope. Humans were no longer the unpredictable species they had assumed. Elias had shown that his people could think strategically, act morally, and inspire cooperation in ways the galaxy had rarely witnessed. Queen Lyra's gaze softened as she spoke. "Elias Thorne, you have done more than complete trials. You have influenced our society, challenged our assumptions, and shown us the potential of humanity. Your courage, creativity, and moral insight have proven that humans can be trusted, respected, and admired." Elias felt a wave of relief and pride, yet he remained composed. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored that my actions could demonstrate the best of humanity." The Queen extended her hand gracefully. "By the customs of Zytheria, a union of purpose, trust, and respect is formalized not by force, but by mutual recognition. Today, I offer a partnership not only personal, but symbolic of the collaboration between our species. You have shown the qualities worthy of such a bond. Will you accept this role, Elias Thorne? Elias felt the weight of her words. This was not merely about marriage or ceremony. It was about representing humanity, about showing that his species could contribute meaningfully to the galaxy's future. He stepped forward and bowed deeply. Yes, Your Majesty, I accept, not for personal gain, but for the opportunity to foster understanding, cooperation, and progress between our peoples. The Queen's eyes glimmered with approval. Then let this union mark the beginning of a new era. Let humans and Zitharians learn from each other, grow together, and create a future built on mutual respect, wisdom, and courage. The council members nodded, some smiling, some exchanging respectful gestures. Scholars who had studied humans for decades whispered to each other in amazement. Elias realized that his actions had already begun to reshape their perceptions, and that the alliance he represented would extend far beyond the palace walls. After the ceremony, Elias walked through the palace gardens with Queen Lyra. The plants shimmered with soft, bioluminescent light, reflecting their journey together. You have changed more than just perception, the Queen said. You have inspired us to consider new possibilities, to recognize qualities we had overlooked, and to embrace a partnership based on trust rather than tradition alone. Elias smiled. And you have taught me the value of patience, observation, and understanding. Humanity can learn much from the Zitharians, just as your people can learn from us. Together, we can create something stronger than either species alone. The Queen nodded. Indeed, this is the start of a future in which humans are no longer underestimated, where your strengths, creativity, courage, and morality are recognized and respected across the stars. As Elias looked out over the city that shimmered like a constellation on the surface of the planet, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been difficult, the challenges daunting, but humanity had prevailed not through power or dominance, but through ingenuity, morality, and the ability to inspire trust and cooperation. For the first time, he truly understood the meaning of the trials. They had been designed not only to test him personally, but to show the galaxy that humans could rise to any challenge, adapt to any circumstance, and contribute positively to civilizations far more advanced than their own. That evening, as the sun set and cast long, colorful reflections across the crystalline towers, Elias sat quietly with the Queen. They spoke of possibilities, of plans for interstellar collaboration, and other ways their peoples could learn from one another. He realized that this was more than a personal victory, it was a triumph for humanity as a whole. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries, dismissed as unpredictable or weak. But through courage, creativity, and moral insight, humans could now claim a respected place among the stars. Elias Thorne, a single diplomat from a distant world, had become a symbol of human potential, proving that the spirit, ingenuity, and character of his species could shine even in the most challenging and unfamiliar circumstances. As the night deepened and the palace quieted, Elias reflected on the journey. The challenges had tested his mind, his creativity, and his moral compass. He had faced the unknown, navigated subtle politics, and demonstrated the strengths of his species. And in doing so, he had not only changed the perception of humans, but also laid the foundation for a new era of cooperation and understanding. In the soft glow of the palace, Elias felt a quiet pride. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer uncertain. The species' ingenuity, courage, and moral insight had been recognized, respected, and celebrated. And as he looked beside Queen Lyra, he understood that this new era was not just about alliances, but about shared growth, mutual learning, and the bright possibilities that lay ahead for Elias Thorne and for all of humanity. The future had begun, a future where humans could shine among the stars, where their strengths were valued, and where their ingenuity could shape a galaxy full of possibilities.